Hello, dental online trainers, and welcome to the Dental Online Training Sharecast. I'm your host, Dr. Dennis Hartlieb. Each month, I'll be talking with dental experts who are doing amazing work in the field of dentistry and talk about how they got to be where they are today, what their influences were, and their journey in the world of dentistry. And as a bonus, I'll occasionally throw in a few of my solo bonding sharecasts, where I share a little of my experience with you about what's going on in my practice and lessons that I've learned along the way. So tune in every other week to hear our latest episode. Hello there, dental online trainers. Dr. Dennis Hartlieb with you again for another one of our wonderful Sharecast adventures. Today, I'm really excited to bring with you a dentist who I've only gotten to know a little bit. His name is Dr. Mark Costas out of Prescott, Arizona. Many of you probably know Mark from his work with Dental Success Network and the Dental Success Institute. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But Mark has an absolutely fascinating story about how he got into dentistry and then sort of his struggles through dentistry and what he's learned along the way. So as it is with all of our sharecasts, it's about the experiences that have brought our dentists to where they are today. And I'm just so grateful to have Mark sharing some of his super valuable time. I have a friend who says he's busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. And Mark, I don't know that you sleep at all because I know how much you do. And I'm so grateful that you're spending a little of your valuable time with us. So thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Dennis, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. What a great concept. You're just sharing with me kind of the flow of your podcast and the questions and what you're trying to get out of the guests that are on the podcast. Totally unique, and I'm down. It's very exciting to be here.
Mark, I've read some of your book, Pillars of Success, and it's got a much longer title than that. But if anyone wants to have some really, I think, very interesting reading, the beginning of your book, you talk about your background, and most particularly what I found really interesting was your parents were from the Philippines, and your father came over on a visa for, it was sort of like academics and sort of science related people that I think the U.S. wanted to bring in to help sort of maybe increase that brain pool in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of how your parents immigrated to the U.S. And so my question to you, and you were born in the U.S. though, right? You were born in New York, if I remember right?
Yeah, Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been to Philippines. And what I always wonder when people immigrate to this country, and I'm sure that you've spoken to your family about this, what was it about the U.S. that wanted to bring your parents to the U.S.? What was it different about what's going on in the Philippines? Because I believe you have like two aunts that are dentists in the Philippines, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had an uncle and two aunts that were dentists in the Philippines. They've long since retired or passed away. And interestingly enough, I had two of my dad's sisters that immigrated to Australia at the same time that he came to the United States. So I have a large family in Sydney, Australia as well.
So have you been to Philippines to visit where your parents were from and all?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I've been to both of their hometowns and I visited my large extended family over there. What a unique and beautiful place. My dad was a college professor. That's how he met my mom. She was one of his students. He's a math professor. He was also simultaneously, he was a college professor and he was an electrical engineer and mechanical engineer. Very, very smart math-minded brain, had an MBA and very, very entrepreneurial. But he decided that although he was doing really, really well there and had a large family, big support system, he decided that it would be best opportunistically and for the future generations of the Costas family if he was in the United States where there's a lot more opportunity. And I got to say, gosh, every time I go back there and every time I meet one of my extended family members that comes here from the Philippines just to visit, how brilliant and what a great insight that was for him to do that, even though it was a huge sacrifice. And they basically started from scratch when they came to the United States. I just thank him for that every day. He passed away 2 years ago, and that was something that we talked about all the time. He set a trajectory of our family in motion that would have never happened if he didn't take that step and have the courage to do that.
So for those of us who haven't, I don't know how many generations American, But for those of who don't come from that sort of background, what so going back and visiting and sort of what your parents have told you, what's the differences? Like why come to the States? What was the limitation? I mean, he's a high academic, he's successful in his career. So why make that big move? I mean, because that's incredible to just sort of, and your dad came by himself, right? Found a job and then sent for the family.
Yeah, he got married a couple months before he moved, and then he moved out, with a visa and $100 and a suitcase. You know, the old immigrant story.
Right.
Ended up with sharing a flat with a distant relative, like a third aunt that was in New York, and started putting applications out. Luckily, he got hired by IBM, and once he had saved up enough money just for a one-way ticket from my mom, my pregnant mom, when he left her, and my now born sister. He met her for the first time when they came to the United States. She was born in the Philippines when he was gone. Sent for them, and they went about clawing and scratching to get their first apartment. And IBM treated them very, very well. So they ended up moving several times, lateral moves sometimes, but kind of up the chain of middle management. And he ended up from Chicago to New York, from New York to Boulder, Colorado, Tucson, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona to Los Angeles. I started the journey with them in New York.
When you're growing up, and it's almost like the army brat story where the kids are moving every 2 3 years. I think it seems to me, meeting people who've gone through these situations, one of two things happen. Typically, what happens, you get really good at meeting people and you get really good at being social because you're sort of forced to do it, or you turn the other direction and you have some of the other challenges. But it seems like you just sort of took it in stride, and as I read in your book, through sports especially, you're able to make friends and create a social awareness for yourself in these places. What was it like for you as you're going through and moving and moving and moving?
Yeah, it was miserable at the time, but what a blessing when you look back. It's interesting that you say that because my mom always laughs. She's like, I can't believe that you talk for a living, basically. You get up on stages and it doesn't seem to phase you. You have a podcast of, 2,100 episodes. I get to talk to people all day, every day. I basically talk for a living. And she's right. She said,
Right.
when you were growing up, as a toddler, you never let go of my leg. So I was a very, very shy kid. They were smart enough. My parents were smart enough to recognize that, hey, look, this kid is extremely introverted. We got to do something to help him out. So they put me in martial arts from the time I was about 6 years old, and that led to martial arts led to all team sports as well. I was a wrestler, football player, baseball player. Every sport that they could put me in, I was participating in, and I loved it. It was kind of it was my way to express myself and an excuse to be around other people and not be super shy. So that was really the antidote for me. I also had from the very beginning, I had significant learning and attention problems, and that helped as well to focus and to feel like I had a place in school, right? I was not academically gifted at all. In fact, the opposite. I probably would have been in special needs classes nowadays, but even back then, they were smart enough to make some concessions for me, and they gave me a little bit more time to take my tests. They read my tests to me out loud, starting, from midway through elementary school. And they realized that it wasn't, they didn't have like these diagnoses of like ADD and even reading and comprehension disorders back then. They didn't really get that.
Right.
They just knew that you weren't keeping up with your classmates. So they realized that if they read the exams to me and they allowed me a little bit more time to do the reading assignments and stuff, that I was fine. It was just that I processed things differently. And all of my sons have the same kind of quote unquote affliction or gift, however you want to look at it, because it ended up being a gift for me.
Right.
Because, it may have taken me 3 times as long to study for my exams throughout my academic career, including dental school, but I had a firm grasp of the information once it finally sunk in. And all of my boys still had concessions and still do in college and high school, but they all get like really good grades, and they understand the material. So it's something that's been passed on generationally down. So yes, it was a curse in the beginning, but turned out to be a blessing as far as the learning stuff. But sports is really that was the gateway drug for me.
I got to believe that it had to be challenging. You know, your father's an academic, super smart guy, as you said, right? He's math. He's a math guy. Your mom was in his class, so your mom obviously has some of those same skills.
Yeah, very
And so
smart.
I'm sure as growing up, you had to be sort of questioning like, why is this so difficult for me to learn? And I think what great insight by your parents who could take a look back and make it not about them, because I think so often parents do that, right? Why isn't Johnny, why isn't he smart enough? Why isn't he, it's easy for me. Why is it so difficult for them? So I have to imagine the challenges were really, really severe, but it seems like you had just great leadership with your folks and getting you through that.
What a great insight, Dennis. It's true. I had the privilege of being able to give my dad's eulogy a couple of years ago when he passed away. And, interestingly, two of my best friends passed away very early in 2003, gave both of their eulogies. And my dad passed away a couple of years ago, gave his eulogy. So the three most important men in my life, the men that molded me more than anybody else in my life, I've eulogized them. And there's nothing like a eulogy because you have 15 minutes to condense a beautiful life into, right? So
Right.
people fly in from all over the country. People are upset, you're upset, and you're tasked at giving a 15-minute talk that encapsulates all of the great things that they did and all of the things that they mean to all the people that are sitting in the audience, right? So it's the hardest thing to do, but it's the greatest honor as well, right? So that this is the last thing that they'll hear formally of this person aside from their own personal memories.
Absolutely.
So when I was eulogizing my father, that was one of the things that I said. It was like, God, man, the patience of a saint, right? To be able to sit there every single day and try to do homework with this kid that couldn't sit down for 5 minutes and not losing his temper and just to sit there and work through algebraic equations, geometry, calculus, and like literally allowing me to read out loud to him. It must have been excruciating for
Right.
them. But the patience and the support that I got academically and through sports is just, I mean, every single thing that I have in my life, I have to thank my parents for.
That's so cool. I
Yeah.
don't know how you did it. Both my parents have long passed, and I sure wish I had the fortitude to be able to eulogize them, but I was in no condition to do that. So my one of my best friends, Paul, did a beautiful eulogy for his father, and I thought, man, I wish I had that same ability to do that. So that's so awesome that you were able to do that for your father. Very, very cool.
Oh, thank you. It was a gift. I mean, and one of the cool things was that his little sister, so stories I had never heard about before, his little sister, who's my aunt, who was
Right.
80 at the time, got into town about a week before the funeral. And I got to spend some really good quality time with her. And I kind of used that opportunity to kind of interview her about what was her childhood like. They were there during the occupation of the Japanese during World War II. They were
Oh,
little
no kidding.
kids.
Wow.
So they remember like they were hiding in churches and the soldiers would march by and they had this tiny little window where they could watch the Japanese soldiers' boots march by and then they escaped from that church and they had to go hide up in the hills in these little tunnels. They were living in tunnels and she was telling me that there was this one situation where they were living in this tunnel with another family and the adjacent tunnel was the headquarters for like the Japanese, like there was a Japanese headquarters right next door, so they had to be quiet and all these really, really incredible stories that my dad had never told me. And so I got to include those in the eulogy. It was fascinating, fascinating stuff. And I was just so proud of the person that he became and the mild-mannered person that he was. Um, yeah, so going down a rabbit hole here, but like everything that I have, all of the positive traits that I have, and some of the negative ones I've gotten from my parents. My mom is a fiery kind of very very emotional person, and take much more after her. And my sister is extremely intelligent. She's in finance, extremely intelligent and patient and calm, and she takes after my dad. So we had like two polar opposites as far as emotionality and personalities in our family, but the blend was pretty unique and special.
That's awesome. And that's a great thing is that our parents continue to live on through us. And I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You have several family members that are dentists, but that's not what led you into dentistry, which I find equally fascinating. Um, so as I read in your book and some other background, I understand that your fate into dentistry was between you and an outfield fence that got in your way on catching a fly ball. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a better outfielder, apparently, I would never become a dentist. But yeah, my very first varsity baseball game, new to town. It was after one of my recent moves, and you know how hard it is to move, but to move as a junior in high school, tough, tough, tough.
Excruciating.
Moved from this kind of sleepy little town in Tucson, Arizona, where I had grown up with these kids and I was established on my sports teams and I had a very close group of friends to be able to have been removed from that and kind of put into this completely different culturally environment in Los Angeles, just outside of Los Angeles, was culture shock to say the least. Very, very different, extremely different. But again, I leaned on sports and I tried out for the baseball team the first day that I moved there. Um, and one of my few friends that I had at the time there, one of the first people that I met was a left fielder. And unfortunately, I took his position. He was a start. He was the starting left fielder. He was a senior, and I dethroned him as the left fielder. So as the starting left fielder, we had a couple professional prospects and D1 prospects on
Well,
that team, which was really impressive. I didn't come from that level of baseball back in Tucson.
sure.
So there was photographers at every game and sports reporters and sold out bleachers
Wow.
every time that we played. So for me, this is a totally different environment. And I'm out in left field, and my pitcher throws this lazy kind of curveball to this huge kid. He jacks it in my direction, and like just to kind of set the scene here, I had come from a field that was at least, I was a left fielder, so my field back in Tucson was at least 100 feet deeper, and we
Oh,
had a padded fence and a warning, a
warning
warning.
track.
If you know what a warning track
Warning
is,
track.
doesn't know what a warning track is as an outfielder, you can sprint towards, a ball that may be going over the fence. And when you hit that warning track with one of your feet, you have about another step to go before the fence.
Where the
So
grass ends in the outfield and where there's like a dirt track.
dirt
So you don't have
track
to
or
look down to know that you are no longer on the grass and you're getting close to a wall that's going to stop you.
exactly, exactly. So imagine as a left fielder, a 100-foot shallower fence, no warning track that you had gotten used to, no padded fence. And I badly misjudged this ball based on this new field, and I ran full force into the left field fence. Los Angeles Times was there, and they took it frame by frame because the guy must have been like, "This guy's not stopping. He's going to collide." Frame by frame, as I hit the fence, you could see full flexure in my left calf. I was in full stride.
Oh my
My
God.
face led the way, and so that was the first picture. The second picture was my center fielder and my shortstop and their coach looking for my teeth in the grass. And then the third picture was a picture of my coach escorting me off the field with blood on my jersey. But that was a very, very traumatic injury. I had um, 11 and 11 and 6 class 2 mobility. All of the other teeth were either completely avulsed or broken in half. I broke my maxilla, upper jaw was broken. So I'm starting off at this school with basically no teeth from 6 to 11. And they didn't make a temporary for me. They just put ortho wire to try to stabilize 6 and 11. So I'm meeting all these new kids at this brand new high school with no teeth, basically. But I mean, that changed the whole entire path, trajectory of my life. 18 months it took to get kind of a prosthetic made.
Mhm.
They didn't have implants at the time, so it wasn't implants. I have an implant supported bridge now that was made by Dr. Jason Campbell. Awesome, awesome work, beautiful. Nicer than like even when they created this bridge for me, the bridge was nicer than my teeth, even though I had braces and everything. So my smile was beautiful,
Uh-huh.
but it was that 18-month period of being in and out of dental specialty offices and dental offices that inspired me. It was not even on my radar, but I was like, this is fantastic. These people are amazing. What they were able to do to my face, like no scarring, and my smile looks better. I was inspired, and I decided then, at 17 years old, that this is the direction I wanted to go.
So a couple things. Silver lining is your buddy got his left field position back.
No, no. He got to play 2 games, and I was back. I was back as a toothless left fielder.
So short term, he got it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, when you were, so you're in high school, junior, this is your junior year, academically,
Mhm.
you're challenged through, sort of the learning hurdles.
Mhm.
Were you setting yourself up to go to college when you were in high school, but just sort of like directionless, not quite sure what you wanted to be doing when you were going to be going off to college before the collision with the wall?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had an idea that I wanted to play sports in college. I didn't know what
Hmm.
it was, so I had kind of set that path in motion. I received a athletic scholarship to be a baseball player, which I turned down, and then a small school took me on as a football player. So uh, I initially went to play football my first year. I played 1 year of college football, broke my collarbone, had a neck injury, lower back got hurt. So I decided that I was going to really focus on uh, getting into dental school. So I transferred to University of California, San Diego, in La Jolla, and focused hard on academics.
How do you focus on anything if you're in La Jolla? I mean, come on. I mean, academically, there's absolutely no way. I mean, I went to school at Michigan, and that was hard enough. But in the winters, it's like there's nothing else to do. But if I was in La Jolla, game
Yeah.
over, man. I don't know that I would have made it. God bless you.
Well, you want to know the funniest thing? All you UCSD and San Diego people probably know this, but the closest surf break to, I mean, half of the school is overlooking the Pacific
Right.
Ocean.
Yeah.
But the closest surf break is Black's Beach, and if anybody's from San Diego, they know that Black's Beach. You have to walk down this little path to get there, and a lot of kids come to class with their surfboards because you can walk across the street and you're down in the surf. But Black's Beach is the only nude beach in San Diego. So the closest beach to us, our surf break was Black's Beach. So there's that to contend with as well. But
That's
yeah, it was tough, man. It was. I mean, there was a lot of
distractions.
distractions. Yeah, my son is at San Diego State now, and back in the day, my wife went to San Diego State. Back in the day, they used to call San Diego State kind of the party school, right? So the
Hmm.
smart kids went to UCSD, and the party kids went to San Diego State. Now it's not that way at all. They're both very considered very academically uh, competitive. But they used to have these bumper stickers that said San Diego State, the cute ones. And then they'd have these bumper stickers for UCSD and it'd say UCSD, the smart ones.
You know,
Because
we,
we're
we have
known
that
for
with Michigan and Michigan
academics.
State. Michigan State has some of the same issues going on, so I understand.
Michigan was the smart ones, right?
Michigan was the smart ones, yeah.
I got you. I got
Yeah.
you. Yep.
I know that. So I don't know if you know this, but I was on faculty at Marquette Dental School for about 25 years, including the time that you were there. But before we talk about going to Marquette Dental School, because I love talking about dental school experience, I want you to share your story of the challenges of getting into dental school, because I can tell you there are people who listen to this who are in undergrad and looking to go to dental school, and it's hard to get into dental school for all of us. And
Yeah.
when I applied, I went to Michigan for undergrad, and I was always going over to the dental school and always meeting with the dean. I mean, it's like Dean Strachan, I'm here to say hello, just so you know the face.
Yeah.
And he said, Dennis, you won't be the first to get in, but hopefully, there'll be room, because I didn't have I wasn't the strongest academic student, and but I loved reading about some of the challenges that you had with your applications coming in and the rejections related to that. So tell a little bit about the journey getting into dental school.
Yeah, thank you for that. I graduated undergrad, aging myself here, Dennis. I graduated undergrad from UCSD in 1994. I had my first dental school applications out and ready to go. Um, and the whole first batch, I think there was 8 straight rejections. No requests for further information, no secondaries. This is how they used to do it. You put it out an application, they send out, there's this thing that I would call like the packet versus
Hmm.
envelope. So like if
Yep.
you applied to a school and the next thing you got from them was an envelope, I didn't even need to open it. I just tossed it
Right.
aside. That was a rejection, a straight rejection. If
Yep.
it was a packet, they were requesting more information, right? So packet good, envelope bad. So I got 8 envelopes the first year. So 8 straight rejections. Um, I had a very, very average dental school application just because it was difficult. UCSD was a very challenging academic school. And I always thought, even back in the day, I was like, well, like if you go to Harvard and you get a 2.0, or you go to San Diego State and you get a 4.0, you still get to the top of the list if you're at San Diego State because they're looking at numbers and test scores, right?
Right.
So
Hmm.
I always thought, man, I picked the wrong undergrad because I could have gotten a higher GPA if I went to, say, at the time, San Diego State or a state school or something else instead of a very highly regarded academic school because it didn't appear to me like they were taking, there was no factor for difficulty of school or the rigors of getting into an undergrad program versus another. They're looking at like GPA and DAT. That's like, and that's the only thing they're looking at least back then. And I didn't have exceptional DAT scores because I'm not a great test taker. And my GPA was average. I think I had 3.1 or 3.2. So, I mean, I could just imagine like the stacks back in the day. It was like physical stacks of applications, just them having a stack for like, okay, here's a small stack for the people that we're interested in. Here's a gigantic stack of people that are just average. And
Yep.
I always pictured myself just getting tossed into this sea of average applications. So it was very disheartening. So, you know, fast forward to shorten the story, it took me 3 years and 21 tries. I applied 21 times and I got into Marquette University School of Dentistry um, in the pre-enrollment support program. I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember that,
I
Dennis,
do. Hmm.
but that was for 10 students at the time of minority descent. Um, and we had all different types of nationalities in there. I was the Hispanic slash Filipino person in there. And if you passed all of these accelerated summer classes, then they would admit you into the freshman class. And luckily, all 10 of us made it through that. But that's how I got in. Interestingly, another one of these, just like, wow, what a blessing it was that I didn't get in.
Right.
During that time, I got into the executive MBA program at University of San Diego. So I started getting my MBA. Um, I worked as a sales rep for a wine company for about a year, and then I transitioned into business ownership. I bought a franchise for a catering truck. So I drive a catering truck during the day, and I go to MBA classes at night. And I learned a ton about business, about entrepreneurship from owning my own business, and then formal business stuff from the executive MBA program. And then when I got to dental school, I was 3 years behind most of my classmates, but I had this grittiness and depth of business understanding that most people just didn't have at all. Like if you go straight from 18 years old to undergrad, straight from undergrad at 21 to or 22 to dental school, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, here you go. Here's $1 million to go buy or start a dental practice. What do you know about anything? Like
Well,
nothing except for the
so
inside of a book.
so true, and I think that's so interesting. So you had several years where you were applying to dental schools, not getting in, and but you got to make a living, so you're just scratching and clawing. If I remember right, you were doing everything. You're a bouncer, you were in sales, and then and I think as you referred to it, the Roach Coach was
Yep.
the food van. There's a great book called The Van by a guy named Roddy Doyle. It's complete fiction. He's Irish, and it's about these two guys that get a fish and chips van during World Cup in Ireland back in like the 1980 or something. And it's absolutely hilarious. It's like laugh out loud kind of reading. And
That's
so I've
cool.
always had an admiration, or since I read that book, I've had a certain admiration for people who do food trucking. And so I have to ask because never having been, I've been in my whole life besides dentistry has been in restaurants, but those are all brick and mortar. So I've never worked in a food truck or food van. And so I want to back up because I want to ask what that was like. Because I got to imagine it's just hot and stinky, long hours and exhausting. But you get to serve people. And beyond the fact that you get to serve people and see them being happy, It had to be complete hell. What was it like?
Well, okay, listen. So this was long before food trucks were sexy.
Yeah.
Now there's reality shows about it, and like most of it seems as though to me, like most of the Michelin three-star Michelin chefs started out with a food truck or
No
working
kidding,
in.
right?
There's like movies about them, and it's like
Right. Very
it
romantic,
yeah,
right?
it was not romantic and it was not sexy at all. So I worked construction. That was part of the things that I did when I was going through high school and college. And yeah, you're right. I had just about every odd job you could. I was a personal trainer. I was a kickboxing instructor. I was a bouncer. I worked in sales. So I did just about everything. But I will tell you that construction as a whole, and my middle son is going into construction. He wants to be a general contractor, but typically not a sophisticated group of friendly people. Like construction workers are typically rough around the edges, and I was
Yep.
one of them, so I can call it out. Rough around the edges, not very nice. But this was my segment of the population that I was serving, right? So
Hmm.
I purchased a route. So the way that the franchise worked was that I purchased a route. I got the truck. I would pay a daily a rate for the truck
Okay.
and all of the stuff inside. They had a Costco type warehouse. You had to buy all the things from them. So they'd mark it up. It was higher than retail. So you had to buy all your raw materials, all your Cokes, all your Marlboro Lights, all your coffee, candy bars, everything that you wanted to stock your truck with, you'd have to buy above retail from them. So they're making a markup on that. Then they were
Right.
leasing me the truck. And then they had a salesperson that would go around to these different sites and they would sell them into allowing us to be there for a period of time. So I would buy a route and that's how it would work.
What a great
Anything that I wanted
concept.
to charge, anything that I wanted to charge over and above that, I kept the delta. Okay. So very simple business model. Okay, so I would drive from construction site to construction site, or like a large, say, industrial, like solar turbines was one of my stops. So they make turbines for airplane engines. So they have these huge campuses that sprawl acres and acres, but they don't have a lunchroom. So they would hire several lunch trucks, and we would go and we would serve lunch to these people for 15 minutes and in and out. So I would drive from spot to spot, literally flip up the door, and that would expose all of the merchandise that I had to sell, like Cokes and cigarettes and coffee. And I'd have a cook in the back, and she would be selling carne asada burritos and cheeseburgers and French fries, and we would be there for 15 minutes. I'd close the door and we'd head to the next one, like
No
literally doing
kidding.
that all day long, slinging quarters and dollars. It was all cash business. At the end of the day, I'd have 1,200, 1,500 bucks in cash.
No
And then you
kidding.
have to figure out like, okay, like how much did today cost? Okay. So I would subtract, the lease, and then I would amortize like what the route cost me for that particular day. I had somebody that loaded up my truck in the morning. He was our ice guy.
Mhm.
I had the person that was going to clean the truck at the end of the day, and then I had Mercedes, my cook. So it was entrepreneurship 101,
Yeah,
right?
no
So
kidding.
like, how do you read the P&L? How do you decide like if this was a profitable day? What was my break even point? Just like dentistry, man. I mean,
Right. Totally.
like a lunch truck is exactly the same as a dental office, which is exactly the same as any other business out there. So I mean, if you were to put, side by side, like the value of the MBA, I didn't finish because I got into dental school a couple classes short of finishing. But if you were going to put side by side the value of the MBA versus value of the Roach Coach, I would say Roach Coach 10 out of 10 times.
My roommate when I was in dental school was MBA at Michigan, and certainly, and Paul's super brilliant. Same guy that gave the eulogy for his father, as a matter of fact. But I don't think anything that he learned at his MBA at Michigan was applicable to like what would I would be doing on a daily basis in a dental practice. So I think,
Not
if
even
you're
close.
going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, certainly there'd be some valuable information. But for what we do day to day, yeah, the School of Knocks, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is so far removed. What you learn in MBA is so far removed from what we do in a dental practice, but so close to what we do in a Roach Coach.
Yeah, yeah. When
However, I mean, I'm dusting off some of this stuff like EBITDA and like these private equity and venture capital and all the stuff that I learned about during my MBA. And now I've evolved into working with these larger deals so that it is actually helping me, 23 years later, it's helping.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
when you're going through this, one of the struggles as dentists is that we don't often have people to lean on as we're learning this entrepreneurial aspect of dentistry. When you're going through this with the food truck, did
Mhm.
you have family members to help you with sort of like, looking at a P&L, for instance, things that you need to look, or did you just sort of like grind it out, figure it out on your own?
They tried. They had a business development department wing within the franchise, this catering company that I leased from, but it
Hmm.
was, I mean, it was nothing.
Yeah.
It was about as effective as like the practice management courses we take in dental
I
school.
was just gonna, I was just gonna ask that.
And
You
not
beat me
not
to the
helpful,
punch.
not helpful at all. It was
Yeah.
mostly focused on you need to buy more stuff from us.
Hmm.
That was kind of the thrust of it. But yeah, it was just in the trenches. It was like, all right, you're gonna survive or not. So I tried to self-educate myself as much as possible, which unfortunately I feel like most dentists that are starting dental practices have to do
Yeah,
self-education best they can.
totally. Yeah, totally. Moving on to dental school then. So you go to Marquette Dental School.
Mhm.
You were there 2002. Is that the class that you're in?
Graduated 2002, started in 98.
Okay, so were you in the old school or the new school? Sorry for those who aren't familiar with Marquette. Marquette had this 100-year-old institution of a dental school, and then they built this just state-of-the-art dental school right around that time. And so, where were you?
Yeah, I mean, I timed it perfectly. The last day of Lab 305 was my class. The last year of Lab 305 was my class, and the first day of the new school was the next class. So I missed it all.
You missed it all, so you were in the old school throughout. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and sorry for those who are not familiar with Marquette. I just got to ask, which were you down in group four? Which group were you in? I don't.
I was
You were
sisterless.
sister list
She
group. Yeah.
she and I still communicate. She's just a wonderful human. She's
Yeah, I saw her not too long ago. I was upstairs in group one with Tony Zebert. I was up on
Yep.
on the top on the upper floor. So anyhow, enough of that. But
Yep.
when you started out at Marquette Dental School, what was your experience like? I can tell you when I started dental school at Michigan, I was blown away by how smart everybody was and um, how not smart I was. That was my first. I will tell you. Let me tell you a story because I love this. When I was in dental school, we have this wonderful library, the Law Library of Michigan. It looks like it's something out of Harry Potter or out of Cambridge. It's this just Gothic with all these stained glass windows. Instead of having like little desks that you work at, these huge tables, and there'd be chairs that you draw up to these enormous long tables. And I was studying on a Saturday night. This was like maybe November, first semester, November, December, probably November. And I'm all the way in the back of the library. And this library is as quiet as a church. And all of a sudden, Saturday night, and it's around midnight or so, and I'm studying gross anatomy, and I'm working my tail off, and I'm working my tail off. And all of a sudden, I hear people laughing. And people don't laugh. First of all, people don't laugh at Michigan. People don't laugh at the law school for sure. Not in the library at midnight.
That's
And I
so good.
didn't even turn around. I'm facing the back of the room. I didn't even turn around. I just start closing my books because I had the most awesome classmates. I said, I don't know what's coming, but I know it's about me. I just start closing my books, and four of my classmates came in. You couldn't do this today. They came with nylons over their head and black hoodies, and they literally just lifted me up on my chair. They threw my books in the backpack. They threw me to the back of a Jeep, and they said, this is the last time you're studying on a Saturday night. And they drove me to a party. And it saved
Oh,
me, quite honestly, because I was just so wrapped up in trying to keep up academically. And so that was sort of my life as I was starting in Michigan. And so, how was things for you when you were up at Marquette?
that is such a good story. That is straight out of like a hungover movie.
Yeah, totally. And if you
Oh,
knew my classmates, it was kind of like got out of hangover movie,
oh,
quite honestly.
I love it. It was one of those careful what you wish for moments for me. I remember the first day I was meeting everybody. It was really exciting. It's just like starting undergrad, right? So you're
Mhm.
meeting all these new people, pretty girls, handsome guys. Like you're already like kind of figuring out who like you have things in common with. Everybody's story is unique and special and interesting. It's like extremely exciting when you go to dental school, just like it is for undergrad. Leaving your tiny little what you're used to and what you've become accustomed to, I guess. And looking around, everybody seemed relatively normal. There's some introverts and there's some geeky guys and like what you'd expect from higher education, but
Yep.
everybody was very nice until, I realized that I was in way over my head. Like I swear 80% of the people were like biochem or neuro majors. It's like, oh my gosh, these guys have such deep roots in science. And I was a psych major and I had to take I took the bare minimum to get into dental school, like general bio, general chem, physics, and organic. I mean, that was
Anthropology major right here. Anthropology major.
yeah. So you probably took zoology instead of biology, right?
Yeah,
So,
whatever I could do to check the boxes and no more beyond.
oh my gosh. And then the first biochem test, which is the first test that we took, I got the lowest grade in the class, 38%. And I was like, and I studied probably more than anybody in the class.
Right.
And I realized that I had to change kind of the way that I was studying for these things. It wasn't gross like hours. Like that's what got
Right.
me all the way through undergrad. It was like, all right, you're going to study for an hour. I'll study for 6. I'll get a B minus. You get the A. That's fine. It's good enough. But that strategy would not work in dental school because
No.
there's not enough hours in the day to try to catch up with these people, right?
Totally.
So then I switched gears a little bit and I was like, okay, I'm gonna find the smartest people, get into like a study group with them, and I'll be golden, right? They'll teach me how to study. I'll just kind of look over their shoulder, like these are the important things to look at. That was the wrong strategy because they all had like photographic memories. They glanced over the notes. They had already taken these classes before,
Yeah.
and I still was getting the lowest grades in the class. And then I realized that I needed to find a different group with a different strategy. So they were people that were kind of like me. They were hustlers, they were grinders. They're like not necessarily academically gifted, but they had the will to do whatever it took to pass in dental school. So I had this like group of 10 people. It was an amazing study group. We stayed together from freshman year all the way to D4. And I mean, if we got old tests, we got them. But if not, we would just kind of break up the sections that we had to kind of memorize, and somebody would specialize in each of those sections, and we'd kind of share information back and forth. We'd quiz one another. We'd help each other make flashcards. And I mean, I finished right in the middle of the class. Like that for me, that was a huge win. I mean,
Sure.
nowhere near what it would have taken to specialize. But man, I definitely wasn't in the lower quartile of the class, and all of that was because of strategy. And uh, if it's not about rote like hours
Right.
in the library necessarily, it's about strategy and knowing how to study. As you
That's
probably
exactly what I learned as well, thanks to my friends who rescued me
who
from
abducted you, yeah.
yes, exactly. For you, I'm sure it was like me when you finally got to start working on patients, then things were you were able to sort of level up. Is that sort of how you felt?
Yeah, I felt like the clouds parted and the sun finally shined down on me. For it was like, oh, now I can take advantage of like a personality and connecting with patients, and you kind of forget why you get into dentistry in the first place until you see that first patient. You're like, oh, I can help this person,
Hmm.
and this person is scared, and I can ease their anxiety, and at the completion of your first complete case is just like, wow, now I
Do
know
you
why
remember
I'm
your
doing.
first patient? Restoring,
Yeah,
not cleaning.
yeah. His name was Oscar, and then I remember the first one that I lost too. His name was Adolf.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember thinking, man, that guy's got 3 crowns and a denture that I gave him, and he's probably going to get buried in that,
Yeah.
uh, wearing those. So yeah, I remember so many of them, and Sister List had us keep a pictorial kind of journal of every single patient that we had. That was one of the things that we had to do and present to the rest of the people in our group.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
I'm blessed to have that. Like, we had 35 millimeter cameras and we would just take pictures of everything.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea. And I wish I had done that along my career. That's such a cool thing.
Yeah, I'm glad
When
she had us
you
do that.
when you're going through dental school and you're looking to, all right, as we all do, as things are sort of finishing up, it's so funny. I think today with the shortage of hygiene that we have going on in our world in dentistry, this is very much like what it was when I graduated in the 80s. When I came to Chicago, in the back of the Chicago Dental Society magazine for the classified ads, not everyone, almost everyone was dentist wanted for hygiene, dentist wanted for hygiene, dentist
Yeah.
wanted for hygiene. No, literally. In fact, my first 2 years I did a residency, and then my first 2 years, 2 to 3 years afterwards, I was either working at a public aid clinic because there was no DSOs back in the day. Sears was just starting the first DSO way back when. There was no jobs for dentists, so I did part-time. I was working at some public aid clinics, and then 3 to 4 days a week, I was doing hygiene. And I was making more money doing hygiene than I was when I was working at the public aid clinics. And I did that for several years. And I just would go, I was a temp hygienist. I'd work at different offices and just go in and just clean teeth. And, it's very reminiscent of some of the struggles that we're having today with post-COVID and our hygiene shortage and stuff like that.
What year, what span of time was that?
So that was 1988 when I got out. Now, this is maybe particular to Chicago because back in the 80s, Chicago was graduating dentists from Loyola, Northwestern, University of Illinois, Chicago, and then we had SIU that was coming up from the South. But there's about 400 dentists a year that were graduating in Chicago.
That's
And so, for any population, Chicago's not that big that you got to make room for 400 dentists a year. And there was just a huge overpopulation of dentists in this community. And so it took a little while to scratch a claw and get our way through all that stuff. But it is very familiar to some of the pains that we're feeling today.
What do you think the turning point was when that trend right-sided itself? And how can we utilize, lessons from the past to get ourselves out of this pickle right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, as we look at the increase in population of dentists, right, there's more dental schools. I don't know, we're up to over 60 dental schools. Class sizes have gotten much larger. I think, fortunately, dentists today are wanting to work less. That's both, I think, males and females. There's, classes are 50% female generally right now.
Yeah.
But even males, I think dentists want to have more balance and not work 5 or 6. I mean, I work 6 days a week, my early career. You see less and less of that today. So I think, but what do we do about the hygiene aspect? And we see less and less hygiene schools. I don't know. I think this is a real issue for dentistry, and I think we need to get a resolution to this because this is becoming problematic.
I mean, if you're going to think of it globally, when we had a nursing shortage, just like my dad, third preference, when they were recruiting engineers and physicians and nurses from other countries. That was because in the United States, we were experiencing a shortage of all of those things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So from a national level, they acted and started actively recruiting other countries, the talent from other countries. I wonder if that's the solution. I wonder if states like Alabama, I believe, if you are a dental assistant with 2 years of dental assisting experience, you can take a 10-week course and become a hygienist just in your state.
Oh,
so
interesting.
we might be looking at those sorts of things potentially. I know there's probably got to be other countries that have great talent that are just dying to come over here, and then maybe loosening up the regulations in certain areas of the country where there's extreme need. But something needs to be done. I mean, I had 4 practices in California, Central and Southern California, and a business owner cannot afford to pay a hygienist with a 24-month degree $70 an hour when their associate dentists are making $75 an hour.
Right. It's absurd.
It's impossible to sustain from a business standpoint, from a dollars and cents standpoint. It's impossible to sustain.
The only way is if you're a fee for service, you can control your fees. And but what percentage of practices are fee for service in this country? I don't even know, but certainly not the majority. And so the majority of practices are dictated by what insurances are going to cover. And if you're going to be paying your team member more than what the reimbursement is, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
Right?
a $60 pro fee for a $70 an hour wage earner. Not to mention, all the overhead that goes to support that chair. It's a losing proposition all day long.
It is. Hey, dental online trainers, just so you know, this is a 2-part interview with Dr. Mark Costas. If you enjoyed this first part of our conversation, then join us in just a couple weeks when we'll drop the second part of our interview. You can watch this full episode on YouTube or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Again, thanks for listening. Yours for better dentistry. I'm Dr. Dennis Hartlieb. Well, thanks so much for listening or viewing our Sharecast today. If you enjoy this and you want to get more information from Dental Online Training, then check us out at dot.online. hands-on.com. That's one word, DOT, hands-on.com. And hey, be sure to share this with your friends and colleagues, anyone who you think might benefit from this Sharecast. And please be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed our conversation. This podcast is edited by Luna Clark and includes original music by Chris Peterson. And again, thank you for listening. Yours for Better Dentistry. I'm Dr. Dennis Hartlieb.